The shooting range. In this episode, Pages of History, the Starfighter's peculiar fate, map guide, advanced tactics for playing on Eastern Europe, and Metal Beasts, a Soviet frontline fighter. Today, we're talking about a new jet in the Soviet tech tree, the Su-7B at BR 10.0. In the late 1950s, the USSR mostly had the outdated MiG-15 Biz and the MiG-17 as the core of their fighter and bomber fleets. There was a need for a plane that would exceed them in ordnance capacity as well as flight performance. The solution was to upgrade the new frontline fighter jet by Sukhoi, the Su-7. Let's see. We've got a turbojet engine with an afterburner here, as well as some self-sealing fuel tanks. The machine has two 30mm forward-faced cannons with a capacity of 160 rounds. The pilot's cockpit is protected by armor plates ranging from 5 to 36mm in thickness, as well as 102mm of bulletproof glass. As for the secondary weapons, you can take 4 250 or 500 kilogram bombs or unguided rockets, choosing between 64 S5K1s, 28 S3K, and 4 S24. Thanks to its powerful engine, the Su-7 can boast great mobility and climb rate. However, the afterburner brings an increased fuel consumption, so you'd better fill your tanks before going into battle. The fighter jet has no air-to-air missiles, so the pilot will have to use his cannons to fight off the enemy aircraft. 30mm cannons can blow up any enemy aircraft with a couple of well-placed shots, and if you don't miss too much, the ammo load should get you at least 2 or 3 frags. Thus, the best tactics for this jet are boom and zoom attacks and frontal attacks. The machine handles well even at high speeds, quickly turning toward the enemy. Just be careful with negative G-force to keep its wings intact. The Su-7B becomes even more efficient in mixed battles. Your best choice in suspended armament is 4 S-24 rockets. They have enough explosives to destroy an enemy even with an indirect hit, and your ballistic computer will ensure a successful hit even at long distances. If you choose the Su-7B as your aircraft, your first priority is clearing the sky of enemy planes. Thus, you'll protect Allied ground forces from airstrikes, allowing them to focus on their missions. When there are no enemy aircraft left, ascend a few kilometers and start looking for enemy anti-aircraft vehicles. They frequently cluster around respawn points. Swoop at them, launch rockets from a high altitude, and quickly go round to repeat. When you're out of rockets, you can try destroying enemy ground vehicles with your cannons as well. They can penetrate up to 60mm of armor, quite enough not only for lightly armored targets, but also for enemy MBT roofs. The F-104 Starfighter is a running joke among the pilots. Just about everyone made fun of its creators, giving offensive names to the plane. They called it the Flying Coffin and the Widowmaker. And to be honest, it did break all the imaginable records in accident rates. However, it's easy to make fun of it when you're a 21st century person sitting comfortably on your couch. The historical context in which this amazing fighter jet was created was much more complicated. It all started with Korea. The Americans were losing. Years later, we'd hear tales of the amazing 10-to-1 kill ratio between the Sabres and the MiGs, but back then, the US Air Force had it tough. If, at that moment, the potential enemy was so successful at holding their borders, what would happen if they launched a counterattack? How do you intercept nuclear bombers on an ultra-low-level flight when they're barely detectable at the very last minute? What an unbelievable interceptor would it take to stop them? During the early 50s, the military came to an uncomfortable conclusion. Such an interceptor is impossible to create. So, when Lockheed head engineer announced that he still wanted to try, the Pentagon responded with generous financing. Who else but Kelly Johnson, the specialist in impossible planes, author of masterpieces like the Electra and the Lightning, could do this? Even before he started his work, Johnson had become a prisoner of his own reputation. It was no easy task to begin with. To achieve the demanded speed parameters, the new interceptor required more than just an outstanding propulsion unit. Wings! Wings had become the key issue. At that time, aircraft designers were only starting to carefully tap into ways of achieving sweep angles over the compromised 35 degrees that the MiG and the Sabre had. But what was fine for the frontline jet fighters wasn't enough for a swift interceptor of tomorrow that was supposed to exceed Mach 2. Finding a solution took a lot of time, calculations, and ambiguous aerodynamic test results. They decided to go with a short trapezoidal wing with a very low aspect and thickness to chord ratios, a leading edge radius of 0.5 millimeters, leading edge slats, and externally blown flaps. The whole thing was poorly studied, unpredictable, and had an extremely low lift. However, it was the only solution at the time. To better understand what task they had to solve, remember that the USSR had a similar interceptor in mind, the Yak-1000, which they never managed to make fly. But Johnson's plane, however unstable, unfinished, and sensitive to piloting skills it was, did fly. Moreover, its main problem wasn't that many things were rushed or incomplete. It was that the military, before they even saw it, claimed the F-104 to be a universal superweapon, when in fact, it was an interceptor with a very specific task in mind that it performed very well, setting a whole range of altitude and speed records. It was never meant to do anything else, nor did it keep its leadership for long. During that time, new, more powerful turbojet engines were created in leaps and bounds, and new knowledge about supersonic flight was acquired virtually daily. Naturally, it all resulted in newer and better aircraft being created shortly afterwards, and it would have been quite sensible to retire the Starfighter back then. But history decided otherwise. We'll tell you about that part some other time. The Map Guide used to be a segment where we reviewed War Thunder maps. For a while, this section was retired from the shooting range, but now we've reimagined it and are proud to present to you the new Map Guide. In this new format, we'll do more than a general review of the map. We'll go in detail over positions, passages, firing opportunities, and timings. Everything that the most successful players use. In this episode, we'll be discussing one of the first tank maps to ever feature in War Thunder, Eastern Europe. We'll start with the team on the right. The most important part of the map for them is the opposite bank. Those positions affect the general success of the battle. If you see that no allies are going there at the beginning of the battle, show some initiative and go there yourself. Use the roads to drive across the small bridge, and then the bigger one. It's the quickest and safest way to the position. When the road starts going uphill and no houses are found on your left, be extra careful. By that time, the enemy might have reached point B. We suggest you go to your right, away from the asphalt, to cover part of your vehicle's outline. Finally, when you get to the logs, you will get a new picturesque view of the town, as well as an excellent opportunity to shoot at point B, and the approaches to it from the enemy side. Any hostile tanks driving through those areas will usually expose their sides, and with the distance to them being around 600 to 700 meters, you'll be able to shoot them one by one. The only danger for you in that position are those of the enemy that decided to cross the river at the beginning of the battle as well. So, before you start reaping, get rid of any and all enemy vehicles nearby. Our next position is point C. If you place your vehicle against this building here, you will be able to both capture the point and control the approach from the main road to point B. After around half a minute, the first enemy tanks trying to capture the center will find themselves in your sights. Since the central point and the approaches to it are now covered from two flanks, it's time to think about capturing it as well. At first thought, it may seem that the quickest way to it is through the main street, which is not true. It is shorter, but multiple turns and trenches around the square significantly reduce your speed. So it's better to take the road that lies closer to the southern part of the town. There, you'll be able to drive in a straight line, which will give you a lot more speed. Then, just make a single turn towards the point, and you'll find yourself in the position at the same time with the enemy, or, if you're lucky, even earlier than them. When you're in the capturing zone, the only thing you need to do is check the opposite bank. To be precise, its lower part, which is down a slope and is almost impossible to shoot at from the logs. Finally, another interesting position is found in a yard in front of the central point. It'll be useful in defending the approaches to the logs, the embankment, and the forest bypass to your home point. Reaching it is very simple. Just head towards the central street from your home base and drive towards its end. Now, what should the team on the left do? The opposite bank is just as important for them. You can climb on the western part of the map to hide from those who drive along the embankment. Then, as the hills cover you from the town, turn towards the logs. Of course, you'll need to deal with an enemy on your bank first, before shooting at those in the town. Alternatively, you can take the lower route. One good position is found in a yard opposite the central point. It offers fewer opportunities, but at least it's not a duel-type place, meaning you can start helping your allies earlier. You can also use a position close to the sand piles near point B. If you do, head there straight away, without wasting time on capturing point A. It's important to get there in time to destroy any enemy that heads to the logs. This position will now allow you to control both the embankment and the bridges, preventing the enemy team from getting across the river. Going to the forest might also be useful. The position next to the destroyed KV allows you to control the approach from the enemy home point. If you move towards the center of the forest, you'll find a way towards B, and you can even dare to drive further to get a chance at capturing C. Finally, another good position is in the southern part of town, next to a single standing house. This is similar to the previous one. From here, you can aim at the enemy home point as well as control the approaches to B and the opposite bank. Rest assured, this one is much safer for your tank. Now that we've reviewed the positions on Eastern Europe map, we can answer your questions from the comments. The first question was sent by a player called Siamon. Hi Gaijin, can you tell us more about Marge, the person with a photo on the Richard Bong's P-38J-15? Hi Siamon. In November 1943, Bong was given some leave at Christmas and went back home to the US, where he met Marge Vattendahl. They started dating, and in January 1944, when Richard returned to the front, he decorated his plane with a picture and name of his fiancée. Before the end of that year, Bong shot down his 40th aircraft, was awarded the Medal of Honor, and sent home victorious. In February 1945, he married Marge, but unfortunately, on the 6th of August that year, the top flying ace of the USA died in an air catastrophe. Dr. Marasmus asks, what German planes do you recommend for realistic tank battles? German tech tree has multiple good planes for realistic battles. Among the piston engine ones we can recommend the Henschel 129B3, the Bf-110G2, the Messerschmitt 410 modifications A1, B1, and B6/R3, plus the Heinkel 219A7 and the Dornier 335B2. As for the jets, we like the G91R Drop 3 and the MiG-21MF the most. Another question comes from Red J Pictures. If a propeller fighter were to go up against the jet fighter, what sort of advantages could one expect to have over the other? Propeller fighters are usually more maneuverable, while jet fighters show higher maximum speeds. But early turbojet engines weren't very powerful then, so aircraft with such engines showed poor dynamics. If such a plane ever lost speed, it became an easy prey. Then there's a question sent by Quinton VDB. Hello, Gaijin. Which plane can carry the most guns inclusive of extra guns from the secondary weapons? Hi there. If we include all machine guns and cannons that an aircraft might carry, then the leaders are the German BV-238 flying boat and the American attackers, the PBJ-1J and the A-26B-50. They can boast 18 guns each. And the last question for today was written by Error, Name Not Found. Not useful question, but what vehicle is the best at drifting? Hi there. We hope you find your name. Drifting skills, of course, aren't the most useful in battle, but we can actually give you a definite answer. The best drifter of all is the Japanese Type 93 self-propelled anti-aircraft vehicle. Our team loves getting together from time to time and conduct dual drifting races on imaginary tracks. Okay guys, that's it for today. You've been watching The Shooting Range by Gaijin Entertainment, and the next episode will premiere the following Saturday at 4 p.m. GMT or noon Eastern Time. Subscribe and click the bell if you don't want to miss our next videos. I would if I were you. Don't forget to leave a like, stay safe, wash your hands thoroughly, and strategize your way across Eastern Europe. And other parts of the world as well. And of course, tell us what you think in the comments below. See you in a week. Exactly.